Hey everybody, so as promised we are going to set a little bit of our JavaScript aside this week, or not really set it aside, but we're gonna augment it actually with some HTML and CSS, which are respectively sort of the structure and the style of our web pages. So up until this point we've really just been worried about checking what's going on in our behind-the-scenes web program using this console log feature, right? Which of course we know prints data out to the console panel of our browser window, right? But so what we want to do is we want to focus a little bit more on the structure and kind of see how all of these three things hook together, that JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, to actually create the web pages, the types of web pages and interactives that we see every day. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually start separating our code out into buckets, right? So in principle, we could put everything, our script, which we've already started to do, our CSS, and of course our HTML is already in our HTML page, very telling, right? But there, as we discussed in class, there are a lot of reasons why we don't want to do this. So what I want to do now is just kind of clean out this page, get my JavaScript out of the way so I can really focus on my HTML for a minute and kind of see how it works. So the first step in doing this, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to pull my existing code. So you can see I've started with my sort of Guardian data example, right? I'm going to pull my existing code out, and what I'm going to do is just copy that, and I'm going to create a new from template in Aptana, and I'm going to create JavaScript. Now it says either JavaScript template or blank file. I'm going to choose template. Actually, the only difference here is that the JavaScript template is going to give me this little author credit, which is nice to have, right? We want people to know who it is that's written the code that they're looking at. And so now I'm just being sort of a little bit intentional about how my code is laid out here. It was indented on the other page because I had it amidst my my HTML rather. And so I'm just going to pull it all over to the side here, and you can see though that I'm not actually changing any part of the code, right? I'm editing the layout for visual sake, but I'm not editing any of the code. So now I'm going to save this, and it's saying, do I want to save in a directory or file system? I'm going to choose a project. I'm in my jQuery basics project. And oops, I just saved it as untitled. Let's actually save it as something more meaningful. So something like datascript.js. Right, so bear in mind here that just like our HTML page, when we create that, we need to make sure to put that .js on the end, and that's the signal to the computer that what's in there is JavaScript, right? So you notice that I don't have any script tags in here, and the reason for that is that by having this .js file extension, the system already knows how to interpret what's here. So now I'm going to go zoop, and I'm going to go ahead and delete all of my content, terrifying, right? And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add it as its own script tag. So we have this experience already that we can see with this with the Google API where we loaded jQuery. Well, we can load our own JavaScript files externally just the same way. Now there is one important thing here, because the code in our datascript.js file contains relies upon the jQuery library, right? Remember we talked about the $ and parentheses is kind of the way we signal that function needs to be looked up in that jQuery dictionary. We need to make sure that that's actually the first thing, the first script tag that loads onto this page. But then we can add our own. And so as I start to type source, it's giving me a little explanation, URL for the source for the element, right? And if I go and put my quotes, it's actually going to do me a salad here and pop up the name of the other files that would be appropriate to include that way. And of course we can see datascript.js just pops up right there. And so I close that tag. It also generates my closing script tag. So this is where the proof is in the pudding, right? Because what we need to know is, now the reason why we have to include this tag, script tag up here, right, is because obviously we've pulled the script out of the body of our page. So when we put it in the head like this, it gets loaded along with everything else in a head tag. And again, because we have that document ready, this script won't try to execute until everything else on the page is loaded. What do I mean by everything else? Well, specifically I mean everything in the body tag. And right now there's not a whole lot in the body tag, but that's going to change in not too long. So again, I want to make sure that everything is still working. And so what I'm going to do is open up my connection here, right? Because I still want to make sure that I have that everything's functioning. So just to show you, I'm going to, oops, because I didn't save this to my keychain or something. So I'm just log in there. Okay, and so now I'm going to upload that, and it says yes, and I'm going to say yes to all. In fact, I don't have to do this individually. I could have done this. I could have selected 2 of these. Now, the reason why it didn't give me a little pop-up in that case, right, is because I'm not overwriting a file. Datascript.js didn't exist on my in my server folder until I just uploaded that file. You can see now if I were to upload it again, it would say, do you want to overwrite this? And I'm going to say yes. Now you notice that I'm working locally and I'm uploading here. Obviously you guys can do this in whichever orientation you like. So here I go, popping up my my web page in Chrome, and I'm going for the jQuery loading thing. Now, if everything has worked correctly, right, I should still be seeing all of that code that I wrote, all of those console logs that used to be in my web page and are now in my external file. I should still be seeing all of that happen. So let's just take a look, make sure that we haven't lost anything in the process here. And switch to console, and here we go. I can see, yep, as a matter of fact, everything's working perfectly. So all we've done is just sort of carve out that JavaScript and we put it into a separate file. It's kind of cleaned up our HTML page so that we can start looking at some other elements. And so what are the other elements that we want to see here? Well, the main thing is that we want to start thinking about how we can put visual elements on our web page, right? When we go to a web page, we don't look at the console window to find content. We look at the page itself, right? So visual representation, very important here. So we mentioned in class that the main building blocks of HTML pages are divs, okay? And a div element is exactly a box. Now, the question is, when this box is created, when the box is created, sorry, it's an empty box, right? And it actually has no description. It's like it just has no description, it has no qualities at all, right? Which means that it's basically invisible. So if I were to sort of look at this box, I'm going to say yes to all, and hopefully it will remember that feature there. What I can see is, okay, I reload my page. Well, visually, nothing's really changed. If I switch back over to my Elements tab here, right, I can click in and I can say, well, okay, that div is there, but see, I've got one here with the hi there in it, and I've got this one here, and it says, okay, it's there, but I don't see it, right? And that's because I haven't applied any styles to it, right? A div is just a box waiting to be told what to look like. And so in order to tell it what to look like, we need to apply styles to it. So what are styles? Cascading style sheets is the sort of external name for it, but we're going to start with just some simple operations here to get some basic formatting on this div. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add an attribute. Right, you can see actually that there's a lot of repetition in the sort of terminology that we use. Hopefully, over time this will become clearer to you. Style. Okay, what kind of styles can I determine? Well, I'd say that the simplest things that we want to do is we want to give it a width and a height. So I'm going to say that the width of this should be 300 pixels and the height should be 400 pixels. And, by default, I think this div is going to just, it's not going to have any background color. It's not going to have any border or anything like that. It's just going to be an empty box unless I tell it to have something else. So I'm going to say width 300, height 400. Perhaps I'll give it a background color. Okay, now watch, if you see what's happening here as I start typing in Aptana, again, this is one of the reasons why we use an editor like this. Now, there are some links that will provide you guys that provide some nice overviews of things that are of various styles, right? The things that you can, the visual aspects, elements of divs that you can use CSS to style, and there are a lot of them, right? What's nice about Aptana here is that it's sort of saying, it's giving you a list, right? You can start to see all of these crazy things that are available, and I can actually just use my arrow keys to go up and down this and say, yeah, I want to do background color. Now, colors on the web, if you haven't sort of encountered this already, are determined by so-called hexadecimal numbers, and Basically, they vary. The lowest value is 6 zeros, stands for black. The highest values, 6 Fs, stands for white. And then everything else is a value in between. So a little sneaky trick to know is that 6 of anything will be a shade of gray. So I'm going to start that with just E, right? And take a look at this and see what's happened. So again, upload my file, up to you whether you want to do it that way or not. And I'm going to take a reload. Aha! So now we're seeing a thing, right? This is much more what we're used to when we think of looking at web pages, is we see stuff. And I can do a lot of things with this. Right now it is pretty plain, but even just having this is a pretty, is a pretty powerful thing. I can go ahead, backdraft Hannah, and add text to it, right? So if I put it between the div tags, I can say, hey, you, this is my div tag. What's up? Okay. Right, so we can just put straight text into a div tag and it will turn up. And if we want to make customizations, say about, I don't know what that text looks like, right? We know that our default color generally is going to be black, right? Because our default background color is going to be white. And so we're going to, why don't we go ahead and change this, and we'll say interesting sort of thing, which is that color actually describes text color, not the div color, and it's because text was pretty much the only thing that browsers displayed in the beginning, and so people thought color, that must apply to text. Whereas you see background color is what we need to describe the background color of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and say, now I just happen to know a couple of hexadecimal numbers here from having worked with this for a long time. So I'm going to say this is a bright and not particularly attractive red, but it will give us enough contrast to make sure that things are happening the way that we think. And so if we go again back to Chrome, we can see, oops, there we go. So we can see we turned our text red, right? So very, very basic, very simple. Here is CSS. Now, CSS, just like JavaScript, can actually be pulled out of this markup here, out of this tag. And in order to do that, we need to. But in order to do that, right, we have to actually find another way to tell it, rather than stringing all of this stuff along. First, we need to put it. We need to find a way to sort of gather it all together and name it. Right? And then on top of that, we need to find a way to associate that with a particular div. And so that's what we're going to look at in the next video. We're going to sort of extract this so that, because if you think about it, every time, the reason why we want to be able to do that is, let's say that I wanted to have, I don't know, more than one div on my page, right? Well, this is great. So I can just sort of copy and paste that. I'll get, basically the same thing over again. I want you guys to notice what happens here with the layout when I do that. So I'm going to go back to Chrome, and what you'll see is that they actually stack. And this has to do with an aspect of CSS that we haven't yet addressed called positioning. Now here's the problem. Let's say these are two things, like two articles, and I want them to look the same. Well, the problem is that if I have all of these tags, all of these descriptors in line, right, kind of attached directly to my div tag here, then if I change, if I want to change my text color to be dark gray, then I have two places that I need to change that, right? And of course, as we can tell, if I had, say, 10 div tags and I wanted to change all the colors, then I would have 10 places that I needed to change it. So I think you guys are kind of getting the theme here, very similar to what we looked at with our programming. We're going to try to find ways to consolidate those references so that rather than writing the same thing over and over again, we have a way to sort of group things together by the sort of type of thing that they are to us, and apply styling like size, shape, color, etc. all at once, so that if we do change our minds later on, we don't have to go in and change it 15 different times for it to take effect. So we'll take a look at that in the next video.